Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're embarking on a, well, very specific mission. We're going to analyze the really quite detailed near-death experience of an emergency medicine physician.
Mm-hmm.
And this deep dive, it isn't just about some profound event in isolation. It's really about what happens when someone whose job it is, day in and day out, to save others from the brink.
Yeah,
Well, what happens when they cross that line themselves?
that's exactly right. Our listener, you're looking for the key insights here from the NDE of a doctor. We're
Yeah.
calling him Trent C. And when you have a physician, someone trained in, skepticism, objective reality,
Right.
reporting this extreme clarity, this heightened sense of self during a major crisis, well, you really have to meticulously examine the details of that subjective experience.
Okay, let's start with the context then, because it was frankly terrible.
Yeah.
It really sets the stage for the physical crisis that ultimately triggered this NDE.
Yeah.
The sources, they detail that the initial trauma was just severe, a snowmobile crash, and it resulted in a devastating,
Yeah.
was it 26 fractures?
26, yeah. Ribs, spine, clavicle. It was massive trauma. And somehow, remarkably, he wasn't paralyzed through all that.
But the actual NDE, the experience we're focusing on, it didn't happen right then in the chaos of the accident.
No. It happened later during a necessary spine surgery. He was in a prone position, face down on the table, and his breathing tube, it became obstructed. It actually clotted off.
So he couldn't breathe.
Essentially, yes. Suffocating while under anesthesia.
That distinction feels really crucial. The sources make a point of saying that while this was absolutely critical, life-threatening severe hypoxia, lack of oxygen, it wasn't clinical death, no cardiac arrest,
Correct.
yet the mental state he reports, it just completely defies what you'd medically expect from someone suffocating like that.
Exactly. I mean, typically when the brain is starved of oxygen, you anticipate rapid cognitive decline, right? Confusion, maybe panic.
Yeah.
Instead, Trent C. reported the whole thing as, and these are his words, entirely pleasant, filled with incredible peace, even happiness. That's the first, and maybe the most striking, paradox here.
Okay, let's try and unpack that cognitive state then, because this is where his own medical background seems to clash so dramatically with the event itself. He reported having more consciousness, more alertness than normal.
More than normal, yeah. His own explanation for it was, well, kind of understated. Nothing else to focus on, I guess, which suggests this incredibly profound filtering effect. Like all the external noise, the OR sounds, the pain from the trauma, the fear, it was all just stripped away, leaving this unprecedented concentration of internal mental resources.
And his thoughts?
Faster. He reported his thoughts were faster than usual.
Wait, hang on. So his brain is processing information faster, but he also reported that time felt like it was going slower. How does that even work? Can you help us visualize that?
Well, that's the thing. It's a real challenge to our usual understanding of the brain under extreme duress. Logically, if thoughts are faster, more data processed per second of real time, you'd think the experience would feel rushed, sped up.
Right.
But instead, his perception of time itself seemed to expand. He experienced this hyperprocessing, but in slow motion. It's like a completely subjective expansion of reality happening right alongside extreme physical danger.
And the sensory input was just as focused, just as weird. His vision was, quote, incredibly more vivid and focused, zero distractions.
Hypervisual, yeah. But, and this is key, he had no audio recollection at all. None.
It's a silent movie, almost.
Pretty much a silent, hypervisual world. And this total lack of distraction, amplified by the silence, it allowed his focus to narrow down to an absolute point. He also lost awareness of his physical body. That's pretty common in NDE reports.
Okay.
But importantly, he specifically said he didn't experience separation. He wasn't, floating up near the ceiling looking down. He just lost the feeling of his body while remaining the single point of intensely aware consciousness.
Which makes the content of what he saw even more fascinating.
Yeah.
So if we set aside the brain chemistry for just a second, what did he actually see in this hyper-vivid state? Was it the classic smooth tunnel people sometimes report?
No, interestingly, not a smooth tunnel. He described a really vivid memory of white hexagons.
Hexagon.
Yeah, geometric shapes. They were arranged linearly, like in rows, on each side of his visual field. And these hexagons were flipping, changing from white to black and moving rapidly towards a single point, an apex.
White hexagons flipping to black. That's not the usual sort of fluid, ethereal light show you read about. It sounds highly structured,
Yeah.
almost architectural. What does that suggest to you?
Well, the geometric precision is what really makes this account stand out. It could suggest that his brain, in that state of profound hyperfocus, was creating this highly ordered visual structure to represent the feeling of progression, moving towards something.
Hmm.
He did mention it could be tunnel-like, but the structure itself was based on this complex geometry, all culminating in a single bright white apex. And he felt good during this.
Yes, throughout this very structured journey, he reported an associated warm, easy feeling.
Okay, so this apex, this endpoint of the geometric display, that seems to be the critical moment, the decision point. What did this very pragmatic emergency medicine doctor find there at the end of his hexagon tunnel?
At that point, the brightest white point, he saw an image. It was his wife and children.
Ah.
They weren't speaking, there was no sound, remember, but they were just silently shaking their heads, no.
Wow, just that silent gesture.
That image, that silent no from his family, apparently that provided the answer and the choice.
It really seems like it did. He reported that seeing them immediately prompted a definite conscious decision to return to life. It wasn't a gentle fading out either. The experience ended abruptly. Everything went black, is how he put it.
Which he later figured must have been when the medical team managed to swap out the blocked breathing tube.
Exactly. When they restored his oxygen supply.
So his return wasn't marked by, some divine voice or heavenly command. It was linked directly to the physical intervention of the surgical team.
Right, the mechanics of resuscitation. But the emotional meaning he took from that family image, that's the core insight he carried back. He said he gained specific, undeniable knowledge about love. His words were, "Without their love, not sure I would be alive."
Which really shifts the focus, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Away from just brain chemistry and squarely onto, well, relational meaning. The whole experience, however strange, was anchored to his existing reality, his family.
Yes, and it provided this overwhelming validation of how important those bonds were to him.
Which is a good transition to his worldview before all this happened. The sources say he was unaffiliated agnostic, raised Catholic, but not practicing.
That's right.
So given how intense this experience was, did it fundamentally change his beliefs? Did it push him towards religion?
Remarkably, no. He was very clear about this. He stated the experience had zero religious features, no mystical beings, no spirits of deceased relatives, no, Jesus or other named religious figures. The content, he said, was entirely consistent with the beliefs he already held. So this NDE, it didn't introduce some new spiritual doctrine for him. It just powerfully reinforced his existing personal values. And he reported no change in his religious practice or faith afterwards.
That level of consistency is, well, it's actually quite unusual in the NDE research, isn't it? Often people report significant shifts.
It is relatively rare, yes.
Yeah.
The experience was clearly profound, deeply meaningful, but instead of triggering a conversion, it just provided this overwhelming clarity on what was already important to him.
Okay, so if it didn't change his faith, what defining knowledge did he walk away with? What guides his life now?
Well, he gained clarity about his purpose and about mortality itself. The most profound, non-religious truths he seemed to extract were really two things. First, he now has and reports zero fear of death.
Zero fear.
Zero fear. And second, my family is more important than anything else. Those seem to be the absolute defining, actionable insights he integrated.
And we really have to touch on what the sources call the reality factor. I mean, this is an EM physician. His whole professional life is defined by looking for objective evidence, right?
Absolutely.
So when he looked back at this incredibly subjective event, this NDE triggered by suffocation, how did he weigh its reality? Especially compared to, say, the other chaotic, maybe drug-influenced memories from his ICU stay around that time.
He was completely unambiguous about it. Days, weeks after the event, looking back, he believed the NDE was definitely real. And his reasoning is quite clinical, actually, and compelling. He said it was just so damn clear compared to the fog of the rest of my ICU stay. He actually remembers the NDE more accurately, more vividly than the verifiable real-world events happening around that same time. So for him, the clarity itself, that vividness, serves as the proof of its reality and its lasting impact.
Okay, now let's talk about the aftermath, the long-term professional side. Because it's one thing to have this kind of revelation and maybe, decide to go back to a less stressful job.
Yeah.
But Trent C. is working full-time again as an EM physician, constantly confronting trauma, death, the brink. How does having zero fear of death and this hyper-clear memory of peace, how does that affect his ability to function in arguably one of the most chaotic environments imaginable?
And that is the central psychological tension here, isn't it? It's what makes his case so incredibly instructive. His professional life is all about making split-second calls where failure can literally mean death for his patient.
Yeah.
And now, when he's in the thick of it, performing major trauma resuscitations, he reports experiencing physical reproductions of the event, flashbacks.
Flashbacks to the NDE
Yeah.
while he's working on a critical patient.
Yes, that's what he reports. It's a staggering contradiction when you think about it. He's fighting desperately to keep someone else tethered to life, while internally his own mind momentarily transports him back to that vivid geometric calm of his own near suffocation.
What are those flashbacks like? Is it the whole hexagon thing again, or just the feeling?
The sources suggest it's more about the feeling, that profound peace and clarity reasserting itself. Imagine it. The noise, the urgency, the alarms, the blood, the sheer adrenaline of a trauma bay.
Yeah, chaos.
Total chaos. And in the middle of that external storm, his mind is briefly interrupted by this internal memory of absolute calm, that hyper-focused vision, and that feeling of zero fear. It's a profound psychological phenomenon, maybe a defense mechanism, or maybe a constant reminder that the worst outcome, death itself, isn't terrifying for him anymore.
Does that knowledge, that lack of fear, does it somehow impede his ability to fight for the patient? Or could it be the opposite? Does having zero fear actually give him a kind of clinical edge, maybe more clarity or resilience than other doctors might have?
The material seems to lean towards the latter.
Yeah.
The NDE validated his core mission. Remember, my family is more important than anything else, so he fights fiercely for his patients' lives, absolutely. But perhaps without the same paralyzing personal fear of failure or fear of death itself, that might accompany such high stakes for others. It's like his objectivity as a doctor now rests on this internal certainty about mortality that goes beyond just scientific understanding. He feels he knows something about the other side, and for him, it's not something to be feared.
What a profound collision. Professional duty and this deeply personal revelation. This is exactly what we meant by a deep dive today. We've got this incredibly detailed, non-religious NDE from a medical professional. It's defined by extreme cognitive focus, that strange visual geometry, and this absolute unshakable clarity about family.
Right. It's an experience that didn't overturn his worldview, but radically validated it. It gave him absolute certainty about what matters most, and crucially, zero fear of the very thing he confronts every single day at work.
And the unique value here, as you said, is that the knowledge he gained, zero fear of death, family above all, it didn't seem to require a mystical intervention or a religious conversion. It was clarity forged in physical crisis, presented visually through hexagons and the silent image of his children pulling him back.
Pulling him back to his purpose.
So we've discussed how this physician experiences these flashbacks, these moments of profound quietude and peace right in the middle of high-stakes trauma resuscitations. For you listening, consider this. For someone whose professional life is a constant confrontation with the brink of death, what does it actually mean to have this vivid memory of peace and clarity, one that originated not from some spiritual realm, but from a moment of physical suffocation reasserting itself during their workday?
Is that memory a help, a professional tool, providing calm under pressure? Or is it a permanent psychological echo, a burden even?
Something for you to ponder. Until our next deep dive.
Thank you for listening to Borrowed Time NDE Podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss a moment of inspiration. Until next time, wishing you an extraordinary and truly wonderful time on your journey through life.